In a coffee shop forgotten by time, tucked between Chicago's skyscrapers, a woman in her early 30s watched the rain slide down the window, as if the world were being washed from the inside out. The steam from her cappuccino spiraled into the cold air while she slid her fingers across her phone, staring at a profile that said nothing more than, "Financial consultant, loves hiking and wine, looking for a genuine connection." Her gaze was empty, but inside, something boiled. The date was set for 15 minutes from now, and everything about her, the perfectly tied hair, the carefully chosen perfume, the smile rehearsed in the mirror, screamed preparation. But her heart wasn't ready. Outside, the honking horns and hurried footsteps clashed with the silence of the scene that was about to unfold. When he walked in, coat a bit too tailored and eyes scanning the room like a corporate radar, the air seemed to shift. She stood up, they exchanged mechanical greetings and sat down. And then it began. Not a conversation, but a screening. He wanted to know where she worked, how long she'd been at the company, what her 5-year goals were. She answered with the same efficiency she had learned in marketing agency interviews. No tremor in her voice, no hesitation. But inside, something trembled. As he talked about investments and trips to disconnect, she watched his hands, steady on the table, as if gripping an invisible steering wheel. Everything about him was control. Nothing was surrender. And the strangest thing was, she didn't feel like surrendering either. Not with him. Not like that. Because it felt too familiar. Like she wasn't on a date, but in an emotional performance review. Elsewhere in the city, 12 stories above the street, a man was listening to his voice messages. The last one was from a woman saying she was ready for something serious. He replayed the sentence as if trying to extract some hidden truth, but nothing felt real. Just carefully worded phrases designed to sound spontaneous, like PowerPoint presentations spoken with a smile. He remembered his last date, a woman with beautiful eyes, but an anxious gaze. She wanted to know what he thought about kids, marriage, financial stability. There was no room for comfortable silences, no space for chance. It felt like a race against time, or against fear. And he kept wondering, when did love become a goal with deadlines and checklists? In the past, he recalled, love was careless. It began unintentionally, a glance exchanged in a grocery store, a compliment about a book on the subway, a shared song. But now, everything was programmed in tension. Apps with filters and algorithms that promised perfect compatibility, but buried the soul beneath layers of convenience. In a quiet Atlanta neighborhood, a 42-year-old woman folded freshly ironed clothes while listening to a playlist titled Quiet Hope. She hadn't been on a date in months, not for lack of invites, but from exhaustion. Her last experiences had felt like cold interviews, where she had to prove her worth, her clean past, her emotional stability. Instead of discovering someone, she spent her time justifying who she was, as if every detail of her life had to be defensible. She remembered a man who, on their third date, asked why she wasn't married yet, as if that were a hidden defect, and she, despite wanting to laugh, gave an explanation she didn't even believe. Not because she owed it, but because in that game, silence weighed more than words. The hallway lights flickered as she passed, as if the place felt the memory she tried to forget. A memory of when love was clumsier, but more honest. Of hands that trembled when they touched, of scribbled letters and glances that darted away and returned. There was risk, there was emotion, there was mystery. Now everything was too clear, too transparent, like well-organized shop windows where no one dared to show the other side. In Los Angeles, a man sat on the edge of his bed, staring into his closet mirror. He had just come back from a date. It was nice, objective, practical, but empty. During the whole dinner, he felt like he was speaking to a hologram, a polished, rehearsed version of someone, without cracks, without truth. There was no improvisation, no genuine laughter, just laughs at the appropriate moments. as if following a silent script. He wondered when it all turned into a competition of who had the most put-together life, as if feelings were prizes awarded to the most productive and emotionally stable, as if fragility was no longer allowed. A flash took him back to an old summer, a kiss in the rain, soaked shoes, nervous laughter, a feeling that the whole world had stopped. Back then, no one asked where you saw yourself in 5 years. They just asked if you wanted to stay a little longer. And that little became everything. Today, every date felt like a job interview, filled with questions disguised as interest. Where do you live? What do you do? What's your routine? Are your finances in order? Are you emotionally available? But no one asked, what makes your chest race? What's the strangest moment you've lived and never told anyone? What do you listen to when you're sad? Between the lines, everything revolved around fear. Fear of wasting time, fear of being fooled, fear of getting hurt, and mostly, fear of not being enough. In Boston, a lonely man walked across a dimly lit bridge. Above him, the city lights seemed to promise something that never came. He held a crumpled movie ticket in his pocket. It hadn't worked out. Again. The woman had been nice, pretty, polite. But he felt nothing. Because the date had been more about what she wanted to show than what she wanted to be. He tossed the ticket into the river and wondered how many others floated there, invisible, from dates that went nowhere. How many cold coffees, how many mechanical laughs, how many forced hugs, all trying to force a connection that was meant to be spontaneous. In a therapist's waiting room in Seattle, a young woman fidgeted with her invisible wedding ring. She wasn't married, but everyone around her seemed to think she should be. She was 35, had a good job, a comfortable home. But when she sat across from strangers on scheduled dates, she felt like a fraud. Like she was selling a version of herself she no longer recognized. The therapist told her, weeks later, something that stuck in her mind like an echo. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be true. But being true hurt. Because truth was messy, unstable, flawed. And the world today didn't seem to have space for flaws. As she drove home, the radio played a forgotten song, the kind made for moments like this. And she cried. Not from sadness, but from exhaustion, tired of performing love instead of living it. Across the country, in a deserted park in North Carolina, a couple walked in silence. They had been together for 17 years. They didn't post romantic photos. They didn't have inspirational quotes in their bios. But they knew each other's morning scent. They knew the taste of tears on hard days. They knew how to be quiet together without discomfort. They remembered that true love doesn't begin with objective questions. It begins with shared silences, with stumbles, with slow discoveries, with the beautiful discomfort of not knowing what to say. Maybe that's why today's dates feel like job interviews. Because we forgot that love isn't a resume. It's poetry. And poetry isn't written with demands. It's written with presence. If you felt this, share it. Because someone out there may not be waiting for answers, just for truth.